All right, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank all of you for registering for our Metropolitan Community College Cybersecurity Careers Lunch and Learn webinar. Our panel today will be Gary Sparks, Program Director of Metropolitan Community College Cybersecurity Center, Jodie Snider, Director, IT, Risk and Compliance, Janice Moyer, Network Security Architect, and myself, student intern at Metro. If you have any questions, please send them in the chat and we will have a Q&A after Gary's introduction. And without further ado, Mr. Gary Sparks, can you start us off, please?
All right, happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. October every year is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So the Metropolitan Community College Cybersecurity Center, we're active on raising awareness for just the everyday person. There's a lot of different types of attacks that targets just the person, not only just business, but personally. So some of the things that we kind of want to keep in mind is there is a website called Stay Safe Online that talks about how to stay safe online. Part of what I want to talk about is our program here at Metro. Many of you may or may not be aware about our program. We are designated, if you notice in my background, I have the logos of Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Agency. We are designated on a national level as a National Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense Education. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick and share CyberSeek. If you know someone who is looking to get into cybersecurity, this is a really good site for them to visit and look at information. This site is managed by the NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and CompTIA, one of the certification agencies, with data being provided by CompTIA, ISC Square, and SANS. So if we take a look at the heat map here, the heat map will show the openings across the United States. So roughly right now, we're just under 500,000 openings, both public and private sector. According to Forbes magazine, on a global scale, we're over 3 million openings in cybersecurity globally. So there's a big need out there, and then we need really good, talented folks, folks who think creatively, think outside the box to help us better secure data, secure systems, and protect our nation. The National Security Agency views cybersecurity as a national security issue as well as an economic security issue. So there's a lot of efforts being put toward that. Now, on the national map, you notice that there's different colors. The darker the blue, the more openings there are in that particular state. So like, for example, right now in Texas, there's over 42,000 openings just in Texas. Keep in mind too, Texas also has a heavy defense contract base. So there's a lot of defense operations going on there. Let's take a look at Nebraska. 2,458 openings. Most of those are going to be Omaha. So there is very much a need here in the metropolitan Omaha area for cybersecurity folks to come in and help secure systems, help companies better protect data. Now, when we take a look at the career pathway, the career pathway here is you have the feeder roles. These are the traditional information technology areas that feed into cybersecurity. Then you have an entry level, that would be an associate degree. A mid-level would be a bachelor's degree, and an advanced level would be a master's degree. So as I mouse over networking, for example, there's over 200,000 openings from that feeder role. But you notice the bubbles to the right of it that light up. So all the roles in the associate level, 2 roles in the bachelor's and 2 roles in the master's level will relate to networking. And networking is a huge piece in cybersecurity, making sure the network is secured and that we don't have folks on there who don't need to be on there. Software development is a little bit different, mainly at a bachelor's and a master's level, with over 1 million openings there. Systems engineering, again, everything in the associate column 2 and 2, with over 300,000 openings. These next two are really, really interesting from my perspective. Financial and risk analysis. I tell my students this would be a really interesting area to go in to help businesses to find out and understand what their risks are. So when I mouse over that, notice nothing above the associate level. So this is, you're going out, you're helping business understand what their risks are and how they can mitigate those risks. Same with security intelligence, and those two kind of go hand in hand a little bit too. So security intelligence notices, again, just the associate area. And of course, folks who served in the military intelligence career fields, they fit into this well because of that training that they've had in the military in intelligence. And then IT support, again, this is on the only on the associate level, just providing support to IT departments in cybersecurity. If we take a look at the roles, very basic associate level role. When I mouse over it, it shows the feeders into the bachelor's level. Currently, there's about 8,000 openings with an average salary of 92,000. So that's a very base role. This would be equivalent to the associate degree offered here at Metropolitan Community College. But there are other higher roles here. Cybercrime analysis. And of course, cybercrime analysis is using forensics tools like NCASE, FTK, and autopsy to help investigators find out what happened in a particular crime and collect the evidence on that. Incident response and intrusion. Over 9,000 positions open with an average of 89,000. And then the IT auditor. IT auditor fits in very well with the associate. IT auditor over 6,000. The IT auditor goes out and ensures the organization is in compliance with not only company and corporate, but governmental rules, that they are following their password policies, that they're following the things that they need to do to better secure systems. And notice that feeds into a bachelor's level roles of as a security consultant, penetration and vulnerability testing. So this whole thing, and then if you look at the basic of the bachelor's, it shows feeders into the advanced level, 27,000 plus, average 95,000. And then just look at the very basic for masters, a little over 100,000 with 21,000 openings. Cybersecurity is one of those career fields that you're constantly learning, you're constantly reading. As an organization, once an organization puts mitigating measures in to stop an attacker, that attacker is already looking how they can get around those mitigating measures and gain access to the network and the information systems. So this kind of gives you an overview on what careers are possible in cybersecurity. And of course, students, I encourage students to continue to learn. They may start out working in some very basic roles, but after a while, they may decide, oh, maybe I need to go on to school, expand my learning into new areas. And for example, one of my former students, he now works for Fish Labs in South Carolina. I talked to him this weekend and he really scared me because he does intelligence on the dark web. So he's out in the dark web actively looking at ransomware gangs and all these different pieces of information that could be used against us.
All right. Just a few questions. Does MCC have opportunities for scholarship?
We do have the regular scholarships. We looked into doing one that the federal government had would be a 2+2, but there was an issue if the student was to default on that. Basically what it was, it'd be a full ride for 2 years and they would have to work for the government for 2 years in cybersecurity. If the student didn't do that final part, working for the government for 2 years, they would have to, it would turn into a student loan. They'd have to pay that back. If the student didn't defaulted on that, it falls back on the college. So that was kind of a showstopper right there to look at that. But there are different opportunities out there. Veterans, for example, there are programs for veterans to get training, and veterans fit into this as well as former law enforcement because of their training of noticing things, noticing out of the ordinary, they fit into cybersecurity really well because they'll see something that doesn't look quite right and then they investigate it.
Yeah, and I can add to that a little bit more too, in that generally speaking, Metropolitan Community College offers over $3 million in scholarships annually. There are opportunities for first-time students, current students. We have external participants in our business sector. And I would encourage anybody that's interested to apply and apply early. We're awarding for winter quarter. Deadline is November 15th. Lots of funding there these days.
And there are several companies, they will, like for example, Chipotle, after an employee's been there 120 days, they offer a full ride scholarship for students to get their education.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. What sectors are more heavily recruiting for cybersecurity, private or government?
Yes, in a word. Typically, the government is very heavily, as a matter of fact, the federal government has designated, when we got our designation about 3 to 4 years ago, we had to use a framework that the NIST has called the NICE framework. The federal government now requires that framework for qualification for cybersecurity for the federal government and for anyone who has a contract with the federal government. In the private sector, financial, heavily used in cybersecurity. One of the largest banks here in Omaha, they have an entire red team that they use to aggressively test their systems and talk with their CIO. Any computer these folks touch, they're being recorded, keystrokes as well as video, because the knowledge they have, they could do a lot of damage to the company. So there's a lot of things that fit into there. We're also seeing medical being heavily used in cybersecurity. Utilities, Omaha Public Power District, Metropolitan Utility District. So cybersecurity is heavily used in that. We're also, look at logistics, Warner Trucking. If someone's disrupt the communications to those trucks out on the road, it could wreak all kinds of havoc on delivery of groceries and other products to communities that would need it.
Okay. Are there companies partnering with MCC for opportunities in cybersecurity?
As a matter of fact, we're meeting with our advisors tomorrow. We're working very closely. Nebraska is very unique from a community of academic excellence standpoint. There are 4 designated institutions in the eastern part of the state. There are 2 community colleges, Metro Community College and Northeast Community College, and 2 universities, the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and Bellevue University. All are designated under the NSA as centers of academic excellence. So we work together to try to solve these very complex problems and do that. We're working also with Omaha Public Power District, as well as Mutual of Omaha and Physicians Mutual and some other companies. We're looking to recruit more companies to help with us as far as development, keep our program moving forward. And also for internships. Once our students get to the end of their program, they can either do a capstone or they can do an internship where they actually get out and be able to practice some of the things they learned during their classes. I did have one student last spring that did their internship at a company doing auditing. That company kept that student on as an auditor in that company. So that student now does IT auditing. So that gets that student started into this area. And then from there, they can expand into new areas of cybersecurity.
Awesome, perfect. Besides getting a degree in cybersecurity, what other credentials are most important to have?
Well, that's a really good question. The different levels of certification, now there's a lot of different schools of thought. Our NSA representative was asked one time about certification, and she responded to that person saying, "That's nice. It tells me you know how to take a test." So you want to be well-rounded. certifications is a plus, education is a plus, experience is definitely a plus. One of the folks I'm connected with on LinkedIn, his name is Chris Roberts. He has no certification whatsoever. He has passion. And so he has been breaking into computer systems and things like that since he was a teenager. So he has passion for the technology. He has passion for making things better and making things more secure. So he is a very, very intelligent man. And so, you know, listening to what he has to say and some of the testing and things that they do, they think outside the box when they start looking at some of these problems.
Okay.
I can attest that, you know, in the corporate world, that CISSP is an important one. CISM is another good one. And if you're a beginner, you might want to start with a SEC Plus.
Yeah, the CISSP is more of a master's level. So from a community college standpoint, Security Plus, some of those is going to be a better fit. And a lot of the corporate world, they kind of look for a jack of all trades. So they'll shoot for that very top end, but to maintain that CISSP is quite expensive, and you still have to pick up CPEs and things like that as you go along. Security Plus has now added that to that also, to where you have to get educational credits, or if you want to sit for the test again after 3 years, that's your choice. So that's keep that certification up. And it's,
but you know, do look for opportunities of free things, like Nebraska CERT meetings. There's a number of places that you can pick up those CEPs for free if you're, you know, if you're out there looking for them. Even Osaka Squared, it has some free training too.
Yeah, and that's really good for, you know, just networking with other professionals in the area. The Nebraska CERT, and some of those, they have meetings on a monthly basis. So you get to connect with other security professionals that's in the area and find out what they're doing and get new ideas.
Oh, perfect. That's good to know. Thank you. Does Metro have any cybersecurity clubs that they approve of that a person can join to get further experience? And what do they do?
We do have one club. It's called the Ethical Hacker Club. It's run by one of my full-time instructors. And so they meet during the academic year about once a month, and they cover topics. As a matter of fact, they're meeting tomorrow night at South Omaha. And so they'll be covering a particular strategy there that's used as far as keystroke loggers and things like that. But you have those different aspects from different people and what they've seen, what they've done, and just expanding the knowledge. Someone may view a particular issue in a certain way, and then someone else looks at it completely different. And as far as I'm concerned, as the program director here, that diversity of our students is a huge piece, because right now one of my adjuncts, she is a manager at United States Stratcom, and her thought process, I love having her thought process in there, because she views things a little different than what I do or anyone else does. And so not only diversity, that type of diversity of intelligence, common core culture, growing up in one part of the country versus another, you're going to see things completely different and bring a new perspective to a particular problem, particularly in cybersecurity.
Okay, thank you. What are the biggest cybersecurity threats right now?
Probably our number one threat right now is ransomware. We're seeing that Tuesday was the Nebraska Cybersecurity Conference, which is held every year, typically at Southeast Community College. The past 2 years, they've done it virtually. Agent Foley's from the local FBI office did brief on that. What we're seeing is ransomware since the start of COVID, 600% increase. And so the number one way that ransomware gets spread is through internet links, sent an email. So my recommendation, best practices is don't send a cold email with an internet link to someone. If you're going to have to send an internet link to someone, you send a pre-email saying you're going to be receiving a link in there. But even better practice, put that internet link inside of another system like Teams. What I've recommended to our faculty to do for remote delivery classes is they put that Zoom meeting link inside of the learning management system in the welcome announcement. That way that user has to go authenticate to a separate system to get to that link. And that really reduces the attack surface. And from everything that I've seen, ransomware is spread primarily through email. Someone gets it, they get curious, they click on a link, and then that spreads throughout the entire organization.
What does the future hold for cybersecurity attacks?
They're not going to go away by any stretch of the imagination. Right now, we're seeing it continually grow, the need for cybersecurity, and it's expanding. I can't think of any industry that cybersecurity doesn't touch. You look at medical, as everybody probably remembers, about this time last year, Nebraska medicine was under attack. Come to find out, it was ransomware. About that same time, there was an entire network of hospitals in the United States that were hit with ransomware. Additionally, just the week prior to that attack, there was a ransomware attack on German medical facilities. And just so happens, the result of that attack, a patient died because of the equipment failing. And so now the German government, in addition to hacking charges, can also bring negligent homicide charges against that person because they did kill someone by their actions.
Wow. Thank you. I think I recently heard about the QR codes, the quick response code. Why is that a danger?
Well, the QR codes, when COVID came in, restaurants thought, okay, we're going to try to reduce the contact surface for the spread of this disease. So they started using quick response codes. So somebody could come into a restaurant, they could take their phone, they could scan, look at the menu that way, and that way they didn't have to do these special types of cleaning of menus and things like that, or be printing and using resources that way. However, the attacker was thinking about that too. So what the attacker would do, if you have a QR code put up, they would put their QR code over there. Now, a QR code, you can have it go to a location, you can have it go to a website, you can have it send an email, any number of things you can do. So if they scan it and it's pointing at a website with malware on it, now that device is infected. So it's just like putting an internet link in an email. So it will go to a site, do a self-execution, and install the malware on that particular smartphone or device.
Wow. Yeah, boy, anything to get you, huh? Oh, goodness. Why is it so important to keep your operating system and your apps up to date?
Okay, very good. The vendors, and you probably over the past seen commercials, PC versus Mac. And I always laugh at those because they make it out like the Apple operating systems and things like that are not vulnerable. Oh, you don't have to have antivirus. You don't have to do certain things. That is a complete falsehood. They are just as vulnerable as the Windows operating system or any others. So, and both companies, they use this thing called Patch Tuesday. So they push out their updates. Now, if it's out of band updates, a lot of times they'll push it that day. Now, an individual person can do this, but organizations should really, the folks in IT need to go to CISSA.gov, CISA.gov, and subscribe to their mailing list. For example, yesterday or day before yesterday, CISSP pushed out an update. Google just pushed out a security patch for Chrome. So, and a lot of times if I don't pick up on it, I don't check an update, I see that. And when you see it coming from CISSP, they've already pushed the patch. So all you have to do is just go and update the software. Same with Windows, same with OS X, the Apple operating system. I'm maybe a little bit paranoid, but usually 2 or 3 times a week, I'll check, okay, is there an update for this operating system or iOS? So I check on a fairly regular basis. So that way the system is, I know the system is up to date. Keeping it up to date, it really reduces the attack surface on what we call 0-day vulnerabilities, a vulnerability that has been discovered but hasn't been documented yet. So attackers, they'll try to use that.
And if you're not really registered for one of those, for one of those websites like CISA or anything like that, how can you really tell if an update is legitimate?
Well, if it's coming from CISA, or as far as the update, if it's legitimate, going directly to that vendor site, as you might be aware, the SolarWinds incident that happened, the attacker sent out something as supposedly an update. So, and same thing, as a regular person, you get something email say, hey, click on this link to do this update. Financial institutions and legitimate businesses aren't going to do that. But 2, what I'll do is I'll go to a separate browser and go to their site to check from that point. That way, if it's a phishing email and they're putting in a link that goes to a malicious site as opposed to the legitimate site for that update, when you use a separate browser session and actually navigate to that company, then you'll know for sure whether that was legitimate or not.
Okay. All right. Why should users use multi-factor authentication personally as well as professionally?
I've always said this, a user's computer habits, and in the cyber world, we call them computer hygiene. The habits they have at home will follow them to work. And so if they're using, and I strongly, you don't use passwords, use a passphrase. That phrase is a phrase that you can remember. You don't have to write it down. And then when you add a little bit of substitution into it, that makes it a pretty strong password. Some of my passwords has been long as 20 characters because I would use a phrase. And so that makes it much more difficult for an attacker to compromise that. If multi-factor is available, use it. Several years, about 2 to 3 years ago, it was during the fall, there was a family in Sarpy County. They had a Ring camera system and someone had compromised that account. And so they were talking to a homeowner through their cameras. Ring had 2-factor available at that time, but it was optional. And so this homeowner, number 1, had a weak password. Number 2, didn't turn on the 2-factor. And so that's how this person was able to compromise their account and access it. So now Ring, you have no choice. You have to use 2-factor, number 1. Number 2, how they also mitigated, they started treating the Ring camera system like the alarm system. On an alarm system, if you leave your home, like for example, you'll have a button that says away. You push that, it sets all sensors inside and outside. And for the Ring, all cameras inside and outside is active. But if you're at home and you set it to stay, then the interior cameras are all disabled. Only the exterior cameras would be active. So using modes like that helps mitigate some of that, in addition to using factored authentication. Multi-factor authentication too. Some sites will want to text the token to you. You don't want to use that because 2 ways that the attacker can get that token. Number 1, it's man-in-the-middle attack. Number 2, they can get a SIM and get a carrier to put them as you and then they're getting your text at that point. What I recommend is to use a authentication app like Google Authenticator, LastPass Authenticator, some of those like that. Then that way it generates the token that is more secure than that. If they give you an option of doing text or email, I would choose email over text. So that way it'll go to the email, you get your token that way. If you have a Gmail account or a Google account, by the end of this year, you will use two-factor authentication. They're going to force it on all users, as well as YouTube. They do have a smart app that goes on your phone, so it would do a push to the phone, and that's what you want to do with that. Pushes it to a separate device. It's less likely they're going to be able to compromise both devices simultaneously.
Okay. Let's see. A question on that one. So with phrasing, I know I said, never to use, passwords on multiple accounts. So if you have multiple authentication and you use a passphrase, is it still safe to use that over multiple accounts?
No. All it takes is just one compromise and they have access. Certified ethical hackers recommend LastPass. There's several others out there very, very strong too. LastPass was specifically recommended by a certified ethical hacker. They've done a very good job. As a matter of fact, I put them to the test one day. I was connected by VPN to a Canadian server, and I opened LastPass, tried to authenticate. Typically, it asks you for a token. You have to type in the token. This time, it asked for a hardware key. So, which means they're using geolocation. So they saw this connection coming out of Canada, and they go, "Wait a minute, this isn't right." So at that point, they added an extra challenge. Now, too, as a personal thing, you can get a YubiKey. And I know this would be difficult to see. This is a YubiKey. So the YubiKey, and this one's a little bit more expensive because it has NFC built into it. So I can use it for my phone, but I can go to a site, have it registered, say at Facebook or whatever social media site, and then I would plug it into the USB, and then you have to tap it in order for it to push the authentication that way.
Gary, can you hold that up? Right, I had to say it right in front of your face. Your background wasn't overriding it, and people could see it if they want to be able to see it right there. Yep. And does it have the flip it around? Thank you. Yep, right there. Thank you. That's perfect. They can see it there.
And you get these on Amazon. Oops, sorry. You got to love the backgrounds.
Yeah.
But Google purchased YubiKeys for all their employees to use. They have to use those. Their attack surface dropped 99.9%. So those things work. And of course, a lot of it too is knowing how to identify the attack. My wife has gotten really good at identifying spam, that is phishing through text and phishing emails. As a matter of fact, there was one, I got this one yesterday, and so I was just kind of chuckling about it. And so this was a text that I received yesterday. Hello, your $4,081 rebate from the DMV is waiting. Click on this link. So I just kind of chuckle about that. Actually, there's one time I was getting a vehicle registered and the guy about fell over because they owed me money. He thought that wasn't right. So being able to identify it if it doesn't look right, Bill Gates is not going to give you $3 million by clicking on a link. Typically, that link is going to be pointed someplace like that. And then you also have the scams that come over the phone by vishing. There's 3 law enforcement agencies that have given me permission to use their videos where one of their officers, one was an IRS scam, one was a you have criminal charges scam, and that officer was a captain. So they record these and they use them to keep the public aware about these types of scams. And we've seen that over and over again. Apple gift cards, Best Buy gift cards. The state is not going to have you pay bail by gift card or pay a fine by gift card. Not going to happen. So, but there are people who believe that, and they'll try to get those cards. Just say, oh, I don't want to be arrested. So it's just that education, awareness, and learning.
Well, and speaking of gift cards, you know, we have the holidays right around the corner. So there's always some new creative thing that folks do with gift cards. So we'll have to be on the lookout.
The fraud season has started.
Yep.
And the shipping one is a big one this time of year too, with UPS, FedEx.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've got your package. Click this link.
Yeah.
Oh, can you describe that one more, Janice?
Oh, it's just a common one that you'll see where they'll say that your package, we have a package for you. And you know, a lot of times you need to be wary of, you know, did you order something on Amazon? These packages don't mysteriously just show up at your doorstep. So, you know, be wary of, you know, when your deliveries are supposed to be, and that, you know, when these links are fake. You get the same thing with banking. I don't, you know, most people have already received one for a bank that they don't have, but they're just sending them out in the masses, hoping to hit the individuals that do have a bank account with them, you know, with a US bank, when it's a fake email.
And what's really interesting with that, you'll notice there's grammatical and spelling errors. That's intentional. They're targeting people who's not going to pay attention to that. And so that's intentional.
Yeah, they're trying to get past the email, you know, the email software tools that are meant to stop some of this stuff.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Now the attackers have changed that. So so you and Seth, you know, and Brian should pay attention to that. Now they're using mathematical symbols to skirt the filters on the server, like the square root symbol.
Wow.
So
Why is that confusing?
well, the software is not looking for those things.
It doesn't know how to, it basically doesn't interpret it, and that as a character that's valid to scan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get
Like,
that one added.
yeah. So like there was one that it was a Verizon. And so, you know, Verizon has the red V. So they used the square root. And so the filter couldn't see, you know, it didn't know how to handle that because it's not a standard type thing.
And I think with that being said, a question came in. How has Metropolitan Community College cybersecurity program kept up to date with current cyber threats?
Well, that's part of what I do with CISSA. I start, and if there's any of the faculty on here, I start my classes because they teach cybersecurity, current events in cybersecurity, or if it's a forensics class, current events and forensics. So I usually share about 3 articles. I have a website that is an aggregate. It pulls from Bleeping Computer, Dark Reading, and several different places around the internet. And so we look at things. That's how we stay current with what the threats are. Plus the feeds from CISSA, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation also feeds into the CISSA too on APTs, those persistent threats, nation state actors that's trying to gain access to our systems. Colonial Pipeline is a good example of that. This threat actor, how they gained access was they were able to get the username and password to an authorized user's VPN connection. And that's how they gained access to the system. We're also seeing, you know, the water treatment plants, the meat processing plant. So some of these threat actors may be doing some small tests to try to pull something bigger. We don't know at this point, but the FBI is kind of keeping their ear to the ground, watching what's going on with that. They'll issue those alerts through CISSA and in coordination with CISSA on systems. And then that way we know, oh, there's possibility of something going on.
And I will add too that both our business function in cybersecurity and our academic function are working very closely with the community and our resources. You know, recently our community colleges and our universities, but the FBI has a heavy position and prevalence here locally and nationally. And some of the resources that Gary might not have mentioned were InfraGard and some of the CIS and various folks that the collective communication and conversation is it will take all of us working together consistently and constantly to continue to combat what we're up against. So that's what we've been doing together, is continuing to look for those opportunities.
Yeah, I probably aggravate Jodie and Janice because I'll see something, I'll send it over to them and say, oh, here's something else I found. But it keeps everybody within our organization informed about what we're seeing, and allows us to be able to better secure systems, data, and the information that these attackers are going after. Some of the things, schools are one of those prime grounds where the attackers like to go after because they think it's going to be a little bit easier to compromise, and then they use that platform to launch attacks against the government or other entities.
Will we ever get ahead of the attackers?
Probably not.
To be something new coming up all the time, and
yeah,
never ends.
there's always something new. The attacker, as I said before, you put a mitigating factor in to stop the attacker, they're already looking how they can get around that. And they're very creative when they're doing that. Several years ago, right around 2000, A&E had a show called E-Terror. And they interviewed one of the guys that is one of the leaders at a conference in Las Vegas called DEF CON. He goes by Mr. Mojo. And he told the interviewer, he said, you can disconnect the computer, encase it in 3 feet of concrete, and bury it 6 feet underground, and it might be safe.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, these guys are very skilled, very talented. And of course, a colleague of mine from Fresno attends DEF CON every year. He's on a capture the flag team there. And he was telling me, he says, well, when you go to this conference, make sure your black matches. Because if you take computers and phones, leave it, don't stay in that hotel, stay in another hotel and leave them there. And there's
yeah. And the other piece of that too, it's so lucrative, right? It's big business, and they have constructed themselves as any business would. They have a business model, they have a facility, they show up for work every day, they punch a clock, they have an HR department. Every day they spend time figuring out how to get money from us, how to compromise our various institutions. And every day we try to figure out how to combat it. So I think it's the new era we're in, and we're not going to see that go away. Most recently, they mentioned it was a $50 million ransomware payment. So it's big money. And how much was it in the United States, Gary? Yesterday, or SEC mentioned the fact that it was in the millions and millions of dollars. So it has gone up over like 306%, I believe, in the last couple of years.
I think it's what you mentioned. I just want to mention is that I think people, hear the word hacker and they think of a person wearing a dark hoodie in their basement, typing on a keyboard under a low lit lamp. And it's not that at all. As you said, they're employees of a business, and there's multiple businesses throughout the world that are employing them. They have HR departments, they have payroll, they do interviews, they have support lines for, you can buy your virus package for ransomware. They have support lines to support the people when the package doesn't work correctly. It is literally a business model that they follow. And it's something we'll always be behind, because typically they are designing something new. To a degree, we have to see what that new is to learn how to fight it. So yeah, we are kind of always fighting the behind. So
yeah, that's very much true.
Yeah.
Oh. And I think we might have maybe time for one last question, and then we can wrap it up with our panel. So I understand we have we need antivirus software on our laptops and desktops. Why would we really need them for our tablets and smartphones? Are they just as much as in jeopardy as anything else?
They are. As a matter of fact, on my phone and my tablet, my provider, they provide security software, because you look at it, it provides protection for their network. If they have a compromised device in their network, that means their network's compromised. So, and there's several out there that you can install. McAfee has some, Norton has some, as far as endpoint security, and that helps. And basically, your smartphone is a handheld computer. It's same thing as having a laptop or desktop, and of course, the tablets are pretty much the same way.
Yeah.
So, you know, having protection on those. I use a Mac all the time. So, you know, as soon as, oh, well, I have the firewall turned on. I have the PC version of this is called BitLocker, where it encrypts a drive. Apple calls it File Vault. So the data is encrypted on the drive. And so someone would have to have the passphrase to be able to access the data that's directly on that drive. Now, if there's people who travel by air, if I'm traveling by myself, I make sure when I get to TSA, no one's in front of me, because a lot of times the criminal element, they'll work in pairs. One person will cause a holdup, and next person puts their computer bag on the conveyor and it's gone through, and there's somebody near the side grabs it and runs with it. So when I process through TSA, I make sure there's nobody in front of me before I put the bag on there. And then when I process through, if I get picked up an additional screening, I don't lose eye contact with that bag. I always make sure I know where it's at. With my computer, my backpack that I carry, I give TSA fits anyway, because all the cables I have in there. So that just really flips them out. But I always make sure stay at the hotel. If they have a safe there, if you need to go out, put the computers in the safe. If they don't have a safe, some strategy you use, put do not disturb on the door handle, turn the TV on so it sounds like somebody's in that room. So that way it's less likely that somebody from the hotel is going to come into the room while you're gone. So little things like that. If you're out and about, you're going home from work and you need to stop at the store for something like that, don't leave the computer bag sitting on the back seat or on the passenger seat. Smash and grab in a matter of 2 seconds. That window's broken and it's gone. We've had defense contractors that's done that on the way home. Oh, I need to stop at the store. They run in, they come out, the window's broken, the computer bag's gone. One case, Veterans Administration, I think it was 3 million or 5 million identities were on that laptop. So that was a huge issue right there. So, you know, putting under the seat, put it in the trunk, out of sight, out of mind is a goal that you want to do right there.
If I can back up a little bit, as I can add to this here, is for the examples of like iPads or an Android or iPhones, things like that, the reason they want to do it is getting control of those devices. You do online banking, they can capture your banking credentials. You have access to like a drive, maybe like a Google Drive or an iCloud Drive. In that drive, you might have your PDF financial documents that you're storing. Another example is wallets. If you're into cryptocurrency at all, and a big one is trying to get into those wallets within the device so that they have access to cryptocurrency. For the travel thing, something I picked up, I got a little $35 travel firewall router. So if I go to whether it be a wireless or wired network in a hotel, the first thing I do is plug that in and then I connect to that. It's not a guarantee, like nothing is. It's just another layer that someone would have to hop through. So I connect to my router and let that router connect to the hotel's network.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Those who travel use a VPN if you're at the hotel or using public Wi-Fi. That helps mitigate some of that also. And you know, it's just little simple measures like that, because you know, even say you're sitting at Panera, you see somebody sitting across from you, and they have a little device that's about this long and has two little antennas sticking up. That's a Wi-Fi pineapple, and they're probably collecting data out of the air. And so, and with that device, you can also put up what is known as an evil twin. So it mirrors the legitimate Wi-Fi point. And when somebody connects to it, then they can use a USB or rubber ducky and Metasploit and take control of that computer that way.
Okay, so basically with that kind of being said, is that kind of almost like, I know they've come out with like the RFIDs for like your wallets, so they can't come by and scan your cards or your credit cards or your bank account card or anything like that. Is that kind of roughly about the same thing for your phones and computers?
Kind of. With the phones, and it was very interesting. My doctor, he found out I'm the cybersecurity director, and he was talking about credit cards. One of the things we found, and I haven't found any data since then, other than the subway system in Chicago, New York, and places like that, where Apple was silly enough to take off the factored authentication to board these trains to pay for them. But contactless pay systems, other than when the card's being loaded on the device, is the only time that I've seen where it could be compromised. So Apple Pay, you have to be like that close to the POS in order for it to work. And plus you have to have either the PIN number or the biometric to complete that transaction. Credit cards, yes, they do have RFID. You can get specialized wallets where they can't be scanned. And so that helps prevent somebody just walking by with a scanner and collecting that data off that card.
Okay. Well, that's about all the time that we have for today. Do we have anything else from our panel?
I think we're ready to wrap it up for today, Lisa.
All
Unless
right.
anybody has anything more they'd like to share with everybody? We really
All right.
thank you guys for showing up today. And Gary, thank you so much. That was a lot of great information. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, again, thank you everybody for attending today's webinar, and happy learning for the future.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.